In the world of firearms, reputation is often currency. We judge platforms by their pedigree, their price tag, and the collective opinion of the industry elite. But history has a way of humbling the experts. Some of the most dominant firearms in the American arsenal today began their lives as pariahs, mocked, dismissed, and ridiculed by the very people who now rely on them. We are talking about designs that were written off as junk, gimmicks, or toys, only to claw their way back from the brink of obscurity to define entire categories of self-defense. Today, we are conducting a forensic analysis of 7 such firearms. These are the underdogs that proved the market wrong. We are dissecting the mechanics, the initial failures, and the redemption arcs of the guns that turned haters into believers. But hardware is only half the equation. To round out our list of 8 essentials, we are including one critical piece of software, a maintenance protocol that is the absolute secret to keeping these machines running forever. Whether you are a collector of the obscure or a carrier of the cutting edge, this is the hardware and the knowledge you need to own. We begin with the undisputed king of the comeback, a pistol that survived a disastrous launch to rewrite the rules of concealed carry, the Sig Sauer P365. When Sig unveiled this platform at SHOT Show 2018, the promise seemed physically impossible. They claimed to have engineered a micro-compact pistol with the footprint of a single stack, yet it held 10 rounds of 9mm in a flush-fit magazine. It sounded like magic. But when the first wave hit the streets, the dream turned into a nightmare. We saw broken firing pins, dead triggers, and the infamous striker drag, witness marks across primers that indicated the timing of the gun was tearing itself apart. The forums burned with reports of failures to go into battery. It looked like Sig had released a lemon of epic proportions, but the engineering beneath the failure was too brilliant to abandon. The core innovation was the patented tapered magazine. By stacking the rounds in a geometry that defied traditional double-stack dimensions, Sig created a feeding device that narrowed at the neck, allowing the grip to remain impossibly thin. Sig doubled down. They re-engineered the striker system, tightened tolerances, and released a second generation that addressed every single mechanical flaw. Once the fixed guns reached the public, the narrative flipped overnight. Shooters realized they were holding a gun that carried like a pocket pistol but shot like a service weapon. The trigger was crisp, the X-ray night sights were standard, and the capacity was unrivaled. It rendered the single-stack 9mm obsolete in a single year. Today, with the ecosystem expanding to the X-Macro and the SAS, the P365 isn't just a survivor. It is the benchmark by which all other carry guns are judged. At number 2, we examine a redemption story that required a passport change to succeed. The Springfield XD. Long before it bore the crossed cannons of Springfield Armory, this polymer striker-fired pistol was known as the HS-2000, a Croatian import that landed on American shores in 1999. It was priced at $200, and in the eyes of the American shooter, that price tag was a warning sign. It was dismissed as Eurotrash, a cheap plastic gun from a country most shooters couldn't locate on a map. It sat on shelves, gathering dust, destined to be a footnote in history. Then came the rebrand. In 2002, Springfield Armory licensed the design, stamped XD for extreme duty on the slide, and boldly doubled the price to $400. It was a psychological masterstroke. Suddenly, the market perceived value where they had previously seen junk, but the gun earned that new reputation. It featured a forged steel slide and a hammer-forged barrel, materials that screamed durability. Mechanically, it bridged the gap between the Glock and the 1911. It featured a grip safety, giving peace of mind to those wary of holstering a striker-fired gun. It had a loaded chamber indicator and a striker status indicator, offering tactile feedback in the dark. It was rated for a service life exceeding 50,000 rounds. Police departments adopted it, and it won Handgun of the Year awards. The XD proved that a robust mechanical design can survive a poor initial impression if it is given the respect and the marketing it deserves. At number 3, we look at the pistol that shattered the "you get what you pay for" myth, the Canik TP9. In 2014, when Century Arms began importing this Turkish-made pistol, the prejudice was palpable. The American market was a fortress guarded by Austrian and German giants, and a $300 pistol from Turkey was viewed with extreme skepticism. Turkish junk was the common refrain. But those who ignored the label and looked at the schematics found a clone of the legendary Walther P99, one of the most sophisticated striker designs ever conceived. The TP9 landed with a spec sheet that should have cost double the price. It featured a cold hammer-forged match-grade barrel, Warren tactical sights, and a complete accessory kit. But the revelation was the trigger. Out of the box, it broke at a crisp 4.5 pounds, shaming the gritty, sponge-like triggers of domestic budget guns. Performance on the range was undeniable. These pistols ran dirty, they ran dry, and they drove tacks. When prominent reviewers began to validate the platform, the floodgates opened. Canik expanded the line into the SFX for competition and the elite for carry, maintaining the high performance and low price point. Today, the TP9 series has forced major manufacturers to lower prices and improve quality just to compete, proving that performance is the only metric that truly matters. If there is a firearm that proved the experts wrong by sheer force of popularity, it is number 4, the Taurus Judge. Released in 2006, the Judge was an affront to ballistic purists. A revolver chambered for 45 Colt and 410 shotgun shells? The industry laughed. They called it ballistic theater. They pointed out that rifling spins the shot cup, creating a useless donut pattern at distance, and that the short barrel robbed the 410 of its necessary velocity. Just buy a 12 gauge, they screamed, but the American public did not care about gelatin tests. They cared about the feeling of security. The concept of the staggered load, starting with birdshot to warn, buckshot to stop, and a slug to finish, appealed to the psychological need for escalation of force. It was simple. Point and click. No slides to rack, no complex manual of arms. Sales exploded. The Judge became one of the best-selling revolvers of the decade, forcing ammunition manufacturers to develop specific defensive 410 loads optimized for short barrels. It spawned the Governor from Smith & Wesson and a host of clones. It created an entire category of crossover revolvers, proving that sometimes the user's perception of utility is more powerful than the engineer's data. At number 5, we find a design that prioritized logistics over aesthetics, the Kel-Tec Sub 2000. When this folding carbine debuted in 2001, it looked like a prop from a low-budget sci-fi movie. It was made of polymer, it folded in half, and it cost $300. The industry wrote it off as a toy for those who couldn't afford a proper rifle. The ergonomics were strange, with a reciprocating charging handle tube that you had to rest your cheek against. But then the legislative landscape shifted. Magazine capacity restrictions made the idea of a carbine that shared magazines with your handgun incredibly attractive. Glock owners realized they already possessed the feeding ecosystem for this rifle. Preppers saw the genius of a rifle that could fit into a backpack or a laptop bag. On the range, the Sub 2000 proved its worth. The 16-inch barrel squeezed maximum velocity out of the 9mm cartridge, turning a handgun round into a 100-yard threat. The straight blowback action was simple and reliable. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Demand skyrocketed to the point where used models sold for double the MSRP. It remains the quintessential truck gun, a triumph of function over form. Rewind to the 1990s for number 6, the revolver that was shunned by the gun shop elite, the Heritage Rough Rider. Priced at $99 and built on a zinc alloy frame, the Rough Rider was treated like a disease by serious gun owners. It was dismissed as a Saturday night special, a pop metal toy that wasn't worth the paperwork. But Heritage Manufacturing understood something the snobs didn't. People just want to have fun. For the price of a tank of gas, you could own a single-action rimfire 6-shooter that was surprisingly accurate. The fixed sights were dialed in and the 6.5-inch barrel stabilized the .22 long rifle cartridge perfectly. Mechanically, the addition of a transfer bar safety made it safer than the classic cowboy guns it emulated. When a generation raised on Western video games decided they wanted to be cowboys on a budget, the Rough Rider exploded in popularity. It became the gateway drug for shooting sports, moving hundreds of thousands of units a year. It proved that you don't need forged steel and a 4-figure price tag to put a smile on a shooter's face. At number 7, we have the pistol that started the micro-compact revolution. Despite the initial hate, the Ruger LCP. In 2008, Ruger released this 9.4-ounce 380 caliber mouse gun. The reaction was visceral. Real men carry .45s, the forums declared. They mocked the heavy trigger, the non-existent sights, and the anemic caliber. Early recalls for drop safety issues only fueled the fire. But the LCP possessed a superpower: invisibility. It was so small and so light that it could be carried effortlessly in a pocket or purse. It democratized concealed carry for millions who would never strap on a holster. It proved that the best gun is the one you actually have with you. When Texas Governor Rick Perry famously used one to dispatch a coyote, the legend was cemented. The LCP didn't just survive the criticism, it defined a genre, proving that convenience is a tactical advantage all its own. Finally, at number 8, we turn our attention from hardware to the critical software that keeps these machines alive. We are reviewing the concept of strategic lubrication. You can spot the difference between a clean gun and a well-run gun the moment you rack the slide. One is dry and clunky, the other feels hydraulic. The secret isn't just dumping oil into the action, it is running it wet but smart. Oil is a tool, and like any tool, it must be applied with intent. The protocol is specific. On a rifle, you need a thin, consistent film on the rails and contact points. You want a shimmer, not a drip. Too little, and you get metal-on-metal friction that generates heat and accelerates wear. Too much, and you create a sludge that traps carbon and turns your lube into an abrasive paste. For pistols, the focus is on the slide rails and the barrel hood contact point. A single drop in these critical areas changes the physics of the cycle. But you must know your chemistry. Solvent-heavy cleaners evaporate quickly, leaving you unprotected during a long-range session. Heavy greases stay put but attract dust. The rule is simple: never mix chemistries. If you switch lubes, strip the old film completely to avoid creating a gummy residue. Make this application a ritual. Before you shoot, verify the shimmer. After you shoot, wipe and reapply. This simple discipline is what separates a rifle that dies young from one that runs forever. From the zinc frames of the budget revolver to the high-tech polymers of the modern micro-compact, we have seen that the experts don't always get it right. These firearms were mocked, dismissed, and hated, yet they endured to become legends of the industry. They proved that value, utility, and innovation often trump pedigree. But owning the hardware is only the first step. By applying the secrets of strategic maintenance and lubrication, you ensure that your investments, whether they cost $200 or $2,000, will be ready when the moment of truth arrives. Ignore the noise, trust the performance, and keep them running wet. Stay safe, train hard, and I will see you on the range.